Hello, everyone. Welcome to this second lecture in the series on the topical lectures from the Better Healthcare Technology Foundation. For those of you that don't know, the Foundation is the fundraising and research support arm of the Australasian College of Physical Scientists and Engineers in Medicine. And the Foundation's objectives are to promote research and development in medical physics, engineering and associated sciences, and in the safe and appropriate use of innovative medical technologies. The Foundation endeavours to achieve this by promoting knowledge exchange between health professionals and with the community, awarding prizes and grants for outstanding achievements in innovative projects, and supporting training and education initiatives in low to middle income countries and regions. And I'd just like to put in a plug 3 days before the end of the financial year. If you are able to make a donation to the Foundation, which is tax deductible, of course, that will greatly enhance our ability to offer grants, especially to early career researchers and younger members of our college, which we want to encourage. And the Foundation in particular wants to support multidisciplinary or cross-disciplinary research in particular. So please have a look at the website. There's a lot of stuff on there that you can have a look at in terms of what the activities are. And this regular lecture series, now held 4 times a year, is just another part of that. Trying to promote medical physics and engineering applications. So the lectures themselves are aimed at a wider audience of scientists and engineers and is intended to provide insights into areas beyond the normal professional domains. And I think we're certainly going to see that today. It's to promote cross-fertilization of ideas between individuals who may not normally collaborate and to seek to encourage a multidisciplinary culture for physical scientists and engineers beyond their traditional craft groups. Today's lecture is being led by Professor Natalka Sakawerska. She's well known to many of you, if not everybody, I would imagine. But Natalka originally was going to give us a talk related to radiobiology and challenges, but something obviously far more pressing has arisen, as we're aware, with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And Natalka's been involved in a group that's trying to maintain cancer treatment services and with the extraordinary pressures that the Ukrainian people are under. So she's organised a small team to address us today and to share with us some insights into the challenges in keeping cancer treatments available under such difficult circumstances. So I'll hand over to Natalka. I encourage you to ask questions via the chat icon. I'll try and collate all those and feed those to Natalka towards the end. And we've got, I think, a couple of pre-recorded messages and then questions at the end. So with that, I'll hand over to Natalka. And Natalka, thank you very much for taking on this task.
Thank you. So I'll just share my screen and let me know when it comes through.
All good.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here today on this topic. I was going to start with that I'd originally been invited to present the research that we're doing. However, this is a more pressing issue I felt at this moment in time. Fortunately, I've been able to work with colleagues internationally and especially in Ukraine in order to bring this presentation together, because I think we as scientists, we like to work on the facts and the evidence that's there. And unless we bring it together and share it, with time, it will get corrupted and changed and used by people for various different means. And so with this in mind, I also then reflected on the AAPM conference that's coming up just in 2 weeks' time, where they identified that broadening the field of medical physics and strengthening our communication and advocacy and leadership skills are strategic priorities for our professions. And while medical physics is about science and technology, ultimately our field is about people. And unless we keep that in mind, we will become irrelevant. We need to remember why we're doing this and what we're doing it for. And at this moment in time, this week, this picture probably depicts it more clearly than anything else I can put in words. Let's just take a reality check. Many of us today, tomorrow, tonight, will be looking at these treatment fields as they're being delivered in radiotherapy, hearing the linac click away. This is what the reality is in Ukraine, anywhere in Ukraine at this moment in time. Beware, there is an aerial bombardment, take cover. So what do? Do you finish the fraction? Do you finish the field? Do you take cover immediately? How do you leave your linac? Because the bomb could land just outside your building. What do you do in this situation? And this is the reality, one which I certainly was never prepared for in my training. Sorry. So in order to summarize what is happening in Ukraine with the equipment and with the facilities and how the war has affected which departments can continue treating, I asked the Ruslan Zelinsky, who is the director of his Department of Medical Physics in Kiev, in the Spizhenko Clinic, and also who is the president of the Ukrainian Association of Medical Physics, to summarize this situation for us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your attention to Ukraine. While missiles flying over our heads, I want to talk about radiation cancer treatment in war. My name is Ruslan Zelinsky, and I'm a medical physicist from Ukraine, from a big and wonderful country located in Eastern Europe. And I want to start from 2014. You can see the map of Ukraine with marks. Red marks indicate radiotherapy centers with cobalt-60 machines, and blue marks with linear accelerators. In total, 52 hospitals, 86 cobalt-60 machines, and 20 linear accelerators. Of course, we had many challenges, low number of linear accelerators, uneven distribution of equipment across regions, need to formalize medical physics trainings and education. And I remember that there were many plans and ideas for development. But unfortunately, war interfered with our lives and plans. In 2014, 3 regions of Ukraine were annexed. One in the south and parts of 2 regions in the east. I marked them with a black line on the map. Ukraine lost control of 10 hospitals provided radiotherapy services with 3 linear accelerators and 15 cobalt-60 machines. But despite all the difficult, constant hostilities in east of Ukraine, we did our best for development. In 2017, the Ukrainian Association of Medical Physicists was established, which has already become a member of a FOMP. From 2014 to 2021, 16 Linux were put into operation, and 5 was under installation in the end of 2021. Also, Ministry of Health of Ukraine initiated the purchase of an additional 2025 Linux. As you see, we have had the tendency to upgrade our equipment in recent years, and we were ready to continue actively. But unthinkable happened. Full-scale war began on February 24. Russian troops invaded from north, east, and south, and this greatly affected the status of radiotherapy in Ukraine. In the first weeks, most cancer centers suspended radiotherapy. We didn't know what to expect next. People began to migrate to Western Ukraine and abroad. included patient, of course. In mid-March, active occupation of our lands was stopped by Ukraine army, and the occupied territories are outlined by a black line on the map. Almost all radiotherapy centers in and near Kyiv didn't work. Two centers in the south were completely occupied. Radiotherapy centers in the central and west Ukraine resumed work despite the risk of missile strikes. Until mid-April, areas near Kyiv and in the northeast were liberated. Many hospitals resumed radiotherapy services, especially in Kyiv, where 20 external beam radiotherapy machines allocated. This is half of the total in Ukraine. At the moment, 3 hospitals suspended radiotherapy due to equipment damage, as in Chernihiv, or proximity to hostilities, as in Kharkiv and Kramatorsk, marked by red arrows. 2 centers marked with blue arrows work under constant shelling. 3 hospitals under occupation from 2022, and 10 hospitals under occupation from 2014. In total, about 30% of radiotherapy facilities cannot provide radiotherapy for Ukraine patients now. And now we want to show a few examples to fully understand what has happened now in our hospitals. This is Ahmadit Children's Hospital in Kyiv. CT simulators are used for trauma injuries. Mykolaiv Regional Oncology Center's medical physicist shows the fragments found near the hospital. Each of them could have been caused by this if it gets into people instead of glass or wall. Kharkiv Regional Oncology Center damaged by shelling that continues to this day. Destroyed walls, ceilings, broken windows and doors. This is our reality. Mariupol Cancer Center completely destroyed, staff in tears, don't need any comments. This is example from my Spezhenko clinic. You can see how the fragments broke through the wall and destroyed the treatment planning system for CyberKnife Accurate company. Only one treatment planning system and several windows. This is minor damage compared to completely destroyed supermarket, for example, located 150 meters from my department. I should be happy about it, but I cannot be. I will never say hello to our nurse again because she was killed not far from my hospital. Many patients cannot start or complete their treatment on time. Yes, they were not killed directly by bullets, missiles, or bombs, but each of them lost weeks, months, or maybe years of life due to incomplete or missing treatment, because someone in 21st century is starting a war. Think about it, please.
Thank you, Ruslan. And I think that this really highlights his final slide, that despite all of the things that are happening and despite all of the work that is being done to try and keep treatment going, this is Ruslan's slide. And he has an eye on already the fact, how will we rebuild and how will we make this better than before? So a view to the positive of how we can move forward from here. And I think this is a really important message to stay focused on. What do we do now?
Hello.
Sorry. That was the medical physicist perspective. And then I wanted to present the radiation oncologist's experience in this war as well. So Ruslan very kindly found Dr. Andriy Garnich, who was the chief radiation oncologist at Mariupol Oncological Dispensary, which is the main oncology center in Mariupol. And many of you may know Mariupol from the images that came on our news when the maternity home was bombed, had a direct hit with precision missiles. And the radiation oncology department was right next door to this hospital. So I will let Andriy speak for himself of what his experiences were.
Мене звуть Андрій, я завідувач радіологічного відділення у Маріупольському онкологічному диспансері. І 24 лютого ми ще не відчули на собі військових дій. Взагалі-то зовсім не були готові до зустрічі з війною. Єдине розпорядження, яке я зробив, це підготовити велику кількість перев'язувального матеріалу там до 24 лютого, тому що боявся, що можуть бути якісь там поранення і таке інше. Але ніяких розпоряджень нашої адміністрації з приводу того, що робити з нашими пацієнтами, чи припиняти їм лікування, чи залишати їх у нашій лікарні, таких розпоряджень ніяких не було. З наступного тижня в Маріуполі вже почалися перебої з постачанням електроенергії. Були такі спроби підключити генератор для того, аби продовжувати лікування за допомогою генератора. Це викликало дуже великі труднощі, тому що одночасне обертання гентрі разом з роботою компресора цей генератор вибивало, тому нам доводилось спочатку накачувати повітря, потім обертати гентрі. Але це все дуже-дуже швидко закінчилось, тому що взагалі для того, щоб уявити, що відбувалося всередині нашого відділення, треба розуміти, що відбувалося взагалі у місті. Що робити з трупами померлих громадян? Так, рекомендація складалася з того, що ці трупи треба було зберігати у прохолодних приміщеннях, десь у квартирах, до того часу, як не буде налагоджена якась там обстановка. Наскільки я розумію, обстановка ще й досі не налагоджена там. Саме в нашій лікарні труп зберігався десь близько 5 чи 6 днів. Нами було прийнято рішення, що в таких умовах продовжувати лікування не можна. Ми поставили перед собою найперше завдання – це зберегти життя пацієнтів. Це зробити так, аби умови їх перебування у нас були більш-менш прийнятними. Бо на час, коли розпочались ці військові дії, в моєму відділенні залишилось 12 пацієнтів. Це були і пацієнти, яким не було куди їхати, бо в їх містах вже були бойові дії, в умовах повної відсутності світла, питної води, централізованого водопостачання, відсутності опалення. Ми якось зберегли життя цих пацієнтів. Тому єдине, чим ми займалися, це шукали, де взяти питної води, шукали, де взяти технічної води. На наше щастя, ще й в березні були снігопади, і тому велика кількість технічної води ми брали саме зі снігу. Потім не було вже і газу. Єдина річ, що у нас залишилась, це генератор, з невеликою кількістю бензину. Знову ж таки, нам було вже покинути спроби запустити апарат для променевої терапії, а весь цей бензин ми вирішили віддати на те, щоб можна було готувати їжу, ну і гарячі напої. Можливо, це була велика помилка, але ми намагалися зберігати пацієнтів в коридорах, в каньйонах з апаратами для променевої терапії. Я попросив військових про те, щоб вони організували евакуацію наших пацієнтів. Я просив це ще й раніше, але якось там пацієнти, ну знаєте, ну, їм подобалось. Ну, взагалі в нас склався такий дуже-дуже дружній колектив. Ми навіть з нашими пацієнтами стали однією командою. Я зрозумів, що вже буде дуже і дуже небезпечно, і все ж таки умовив пацієнтів, щоб вони евакуювалися. Як виявилось згодом, це була дуже слушна думка, тому що буквально години через дві після того, як автобус з пацієнтами уїхав, до нас у відділення внаслідок авіаобстрілу влучила ракета. Інтенсивність обстрілів була приблизно щохвилини. Вдень, вночі це не мало ніякої різниці. І тому 16 березня мною і ще 2 лікарями з нашого диспансеру онкологічного було прийнято рішення про те, що треба якось виходити з Маріуполя. У нас не було ні транспорту, ніякої змоги на транспорті покинути місто, тому ми вирішили виходити з міста пішки. Розумієте, там, от коли я був у бункері, коли ти чуєш там як свист снарядів, і коли вони там поруч з тобою, як тобі кажеться, поруч з тобою десь лежаться, таке виникає відчуття, що ці міжнародні організації, якось ти зневірюєшся взагалі в сенс існування цих організацій. Я розумію, що, звичайно, це не дуже правильно, але такі речі не повинні відбуватися у 21 столітті, там, в самому серці Європи. Взагалі вони ніде в світі не повинні відбуватися. Ми зараз ніяк не контролюємо ні апарати, ні джерела для випромінювання. І наскільки я розумію, зараз там в Маріуполі немає ні радіаційних там онкологів, ні медичних фізиків, ні служби з радіаційної безпеки. Тому мені дуже боляче про це казати, але я не знаю, який стан, і не можу ніяк гарантувати там безпеку. І тоді не міг гарантувати, але це все було більш-менш під моїм наглядом. Да? А що там зараз може відбуватися, я не знаю.
Thank you, Dr. Ganic. I've listened to that presentation, to that interview many times. It's considerably longer, as you can see. I had to abridge it to fit into the time that we have. However, the thing that always strikes me is that we talk a lot about the facets of a medical expert, that it's not enough just to be a scholar, just to be a professional. There are all these other aspects. But I think in that one interview, in the things that he faced and how he faced them, you see all these different aspects of the medical expert. Because we're not just scientists and just knowledge banks. If we want to be relevant, we need to be not just the scholar and the professional, but also the communicator, the collaborator, the leader, the health advocate, and to make decisions where we probably don't have much experience, but to tap into those resources of being an all-rounded medical expert. And whether you're a medical physicist or a radiation oncologist or an RTT or any of those areas in medicine, these are the things that we need to be ready for. And I haven't seen it in one instance, in one interview, depicted as strongly as in this one. There are many other aspects of that interview that draw concern and thought. For example, one of the things that really immediately stand out is that there was a cobalt unit, and the cobalt source is now left behind somewhere in a destroyed hospital. And we don't know where it is, and we don't know its fate. And I might just leave that with you while we move on to the third presentation, which is from Dr. Natalia Kovalchuk, who's an absolute powerhouse. Don't know where she gets all her energy. And she's from Stanford University and has done an enormous amount of work in trying to be all of those things that are described by the CanMeds program. She's not only a scholar and a professional, but she's a great communicator and collaborator. And she's recognized the call to lead and to make a difference and to advocate for health in the broader sense, not just in my local backyard, but health in general of people. And I'll let her explain what she's doing in Stanford.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak. My name is Natalia Kovalchuk, and I'm a clinical associate professor and radiation therapy physicist at Stanford Radiation Oncology Department. Together with a team of oncology practitioners across US, we will present some of the projects we were working on to support Ukraine. When the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine started, we started reaching out to Ukrainian cancer centers, connecting with the physicians and physicists to determine the needs and establish how we can help. In April, we have authored an article in Advances in Radiation Oncology where we describe the situation in national cancer centers throughout Ukraine based on the Ministry of Health data and data provided by the Chief Medical Officer of Ukraine's National Cancer Institute in Kyiv, Andriy Beznosenko. We met with Andriy Beznosenko for the interview in the beginning of March when Kyiv was still under constant aerial attacks, and part of it was surrounded by the Russian army. Andriy shared with us that he and his staff and some of the patients are living in the hospital, sleeping in the basement, as it provides a safer space, and the long curfew hours did not allow leaving for home. Bone marrow transplants were conducted in basements during the bombing and air raids. Palliative care has continued throughout Kyiv and other cities due to extreme difficulties in evacuating fragile patients. At National Cancer Institute, for the patients who remained in Kyiv, the inpatient and outpatient chemotherapy, urgent surgery, and palliative care continued. For non-urgent care, National Cancer Institute physician consults switched to virtual platforms, and the whole pediatric oncology ward was evacuated to Poland, France, Israel, and the United States. The patients who were not too frail to evacuate were evacuated to either Western Ukraine or Europe. Much of the time was spent on sending the patient history documentation to the transfer treatment facilities in the beginning. And after Ukrainian army liberated the towns on the northwest of Kyiv, the NCI opened the inpatient wards on March 21st. According to Ministry of Health of Ukraine and Dr. Beznosenko, as of April 2nd, Around 89% of the national cancer centers in Ukraine were providing chemotherapy and surgical cancer treatments. 36% of those providing surgical services were providing them in urgent settings only. And around 70% of national cancer centers were providing radiotherapy services. This data approximately still holds till now. State Nuclear Regulatory Inspectorate of Ukraine has banned the export, import, transportation, and use of radiopharmaceuticals during the war. Therefore, nuclear medicine departments across the country did not conduct treatment procedures. Supply chains are still disrupted, and the tender agreements are difficult to procure in the times of war, so many centers are struggling with a lack of medical supplies, especially disposable ones. And there are staffing issues as support staff evacuated during war. At NCI, for example, 20% of staff evacuated. Most of them are support staff, and most of the physicians and physicists stayed. Dr. Beznosenko mentioned that as a surgeon, he has to do the job of a nurse, front desk, etc. According to Ukraine's Minister of Health, Viktor Lyashko, during the first 100 days of war, more than 600 medical facilities sustained damages. Around 105 of them were rendered beyond repair. And there were at least 60 instances on firing of ambulances. The hospital infrastructure is damaged for years to come, even if the war were to end today. So how can we help? We petitioned multiple US hospitals to donate medical supplies to Ukraine. Stanford and Mayo Clinic donated. Stanford students, together with Nova Ukraine, shipped 80 tons, which is $4 million worth of donated emergency care medical supplies to Ukraine. And you can ask your institution if it's willing to ship medical supplies to Ukraine. Radiation oncology centers in the Western Ukraine, where the volume of patients doubled because of displacement, refugees, they are lacking disposable immobilization devices and boluses. We compiled the list of immobilization devices and boluses, petitioned Civco, Orfit to donate these supplies, and both companies were very receptive in helping Ukraine. We are very grateful for their help, and actually the first donated batch is already shipped. We petitioned Varian and Siemens to support Ukraine with resources and training. Varian agreed to organize training course for Ukrainian centers using Halcyon. Siemens Healthineers created a matched €1 million donation fundraiser to help Ukraine with humanitarian needs. And Siemens also donated 3 X-ray systems and 4 C-arms to various locations in Ukraine. We petitioned Limbus AI to help with auto-contouring in busy RT centers. Auto-contouring software was already installed in few centers and started to be used to alleviate the manual labor of contour generation. Red Formation reached out to us and offered their Easy Fluence Clear Check, Clear Calc, Chart Check, and Auto Contour as well. And we are very, very grateful to all the vendors for their generous offer to help. And we call all the RT vendors to support Ukraine. Every little bit helps. We petitioned vendor to donate PET-CT scanner. Ukraine is a 44 million population country. There are only 2 functional PET-CT scanners for all its population. Both of them are in Kyiv. So during war, patients from all over Ukraine had to risk the trip to get a diagnostic or follow-up PET scan in Kyiv. Per European Association of Nuclear Medicine, there should be 1 PET-CT scanner per 1.52 million people. And according to these stats, Ukraine would need 22 scanners, but it only has 2. So we are petitioning for at least 1 more scanner and cyclotron for the Western Ukraine, as there are many displaced cancer patients there who would need a PET-CT scan. Asha Agulnik, a director of St. Jude's Global Critical Care Program, has been an amazing leader at coordinating evacuation and triaging of pediatric patients from Ukraine. If you go on a Safer Ukraine website, you can see a map of the countries and institutions that volunteer to accept hematology, oncology patients and their families from Ukraine. Asia and Australia centers are currently not involved, so you can petition your center in Australia or New Zealand to help. Stanford Ukrainian Student Association created an app, Telehelp Ukraine, to provide remote health video visits and chat with translator services. And MIM Software Inc. is helping with providing DICOM repository for images and radiotherapy information. We're planning to use it as a platform for provider-to-provider consults on contouring, reviewing plant quality for radiotherapy, etc. So we're calling you if you're a physician. You can sign up to volunteer for this project. We are organizing and fundraising for observership scholarship programs in the US, Canada, and Australia for female doctors of various specialties and medical physicists. Some of them are displaced. We have found a few institutions here in US so far that would be willing to provide funding for the visiting scholarship. We are looking for more institutions to get involved. We are fundraising to pay for travel and initial expenses. Please petition your institutions in Australia and New Zealand to open positions for Ukrainian female physicians and medical physicists. Or donate to this cause. And here you can see the QR code. Nelia Melnichuk founded the Global Medical Knowledge Alliance to help Ukrainian physicians and other medical professionals to stay up to date with the treatment standards. We are collaborating with GMKA to develop and translate educational content for radiation oncology and radiation therapy physics. Please let us know if you would like to contribute to this project. A group of volunteers build connections with Ukraine to create a constant feedback loop on the needs and sustain the support for Ukraine in these difficult times. And we thank all the volunteers for their hard work and efforts to help. And this is my last slide. I included this photo by Andre Juarez as the final message to you. You don't need to be Ukrainian to support Ukraine. You just need to be human. Think how you can help Ukraine today. We are humanity of almost 8 billion. Together we are strong. We can come together as a community to overcome the travesty of war. Thank you so much for your attention and all the support for Ukraine. Please reach out to us if you would like to help. My email is here on the slide. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you very much, Natalia. And we do have Natalia online at the end in order to be able to ask questions. So I know that we've maxed out on 100 participants. I'm not sure what the makeup is, but I had assumed that most of the audience would be from Australia and New Zealand. And so my question was then, what do we do in Australia and New Zealand? And I think we always think about what do we need to do first today, what do we need to do tomorrow, and then what do we need to do in the long term. So I think today, quite clearly, it's record everything, and the responsibility there has very much fallen on Ukraine, and they are doing that from where the patients are and how they're dealing with living in basements and cellars and dealing with trauma patients on radiotherapy equipment that was never really designed for trauma patients, and how the staff is dealing with that. But also the personal stories of what they have gone through and how they've found solutions and how they work through all the problems. What we can do this week, how we can act, is that, and I think Australia is probably strongest of all the different perspectives where we can act, is probably strongest in our educational material and our professional support in terms of hosting displaced medical physicists, clinicians, and ITTs. The reason why they're female, you may have noticed Natalia said, is because the males cannot leave Ukraine. It's only the females that can leave. And to host those displaced professionals such that they get to experience in our hospitals, so that when they go back to rebuild, they come with experience from overseas and they're not de-skilling while they're displaced. However, in the medium term, we also need to plan for the rebuilding of the health system in Ukraine. So, for example, being able to host a team of a radiation oncologist, a medical physicist, and an RTT when the time comes to rebuild, to have all the things in place, the scholarships, the fellowships, knowing who will be able to do it and on what aspects. This all takes time, and we can start doing that now. So both of those aspects really important, but also all the other aspects that Natalia mentioned in donations and so on and so forth, which I don't want to repeat. In the long term, the thing that's really stands out is we don't have any developed recommendations of best practice in times of war and disaster, despite all the wars that have happened, and particular attention to medical facilities and ionizing radiation sources. I guess we make the assumption that no one's going to bomb a hospital, but I think the evidence has been here that hospitals are bombed. And so therefore, this is a critical thing that we need to develop while we still have time. The reason why I say that is because I remember Professor Roberts, who was one of the people who developed the famous pharma chamber, describing how in World War II, the English had time to think about what are we going to do with our long-lived radioisotopes, and they stored them in a safe in the caves of Buxton. They had time. However, if we as professionals are more than just the science, we need to think more broadly. The thing that I really noticed in the World Congress that I've just come back from in Singapore was that everybody, wherever they came from, said we live in uncertain times. And everyone has concern that they're talking about war, that it may happen. They never believe it's going to happen to us, but it does happen. And we have to be ready for this. And we have to be ready to prepare those that prepared to help those that find themselves in cases of war, and be prepared should it come to our door as well. Finally, I've got two very short presentations because I can see from the participants list that we have radiation therapists and radiation oncologists online. And this is just 2 minutes from a radiation therapist and then another 2 minutes from a radiation oncologist when asked to speak about the things that they most wanted to communicate.
Під час війни наше відділення променевої терапії не зупинялося в роботі. Ми продовжували лікування онкопацієнтів, а також наш комп'ютерний томограф, який ми використовували тільки для створення планів, став виконувати і діагностичну функцію. Ми приймали поранених, як дітей, так і дорослих. Так наше відділення почало працювати в режимі 24/7, тому що в будь-який момент ми мали бути готовими для того, щоб прийняти поранених на комп'ютерну томографію, тому ми залишалися постійно тут. І було прийнято рішення залишитись жити на роботі для того, щоб бути готовою до прийому пацієнтів у будь-яку хвилину. Також наше відділення слугувало під час обстрілів як бомбосховище. Пацієнти, а також і медичний персонал знаходився під час повітряних тривог у нас. І коли до нас почали привозити поранених, просто не вкладалося в голові, що в наш час ми можемо жити в таких подіях і спостерігати це на власні очі. Пацієнти були різного ступеня важкості. Іноді проводили реанімаційні заходи прямо на столі комп'ютерної томографії. Мабуть, найбільше мені запам'яталася дитина, це був хлопчик, у якого вирвало шматок спини внаслідок міновибухової хвилі. Коли я з ним розмовляла, я його запитувала, тобі боляче? Він відповідав, що я терплю.
And the second brief interview of the things that she most wanted to communicate was from a radiation oncologist, Dr. Yulia Severin.
Згадуючи початок війни, це було 24 лютого. У четвер я прокинулась о 5 ранку через сповіщення в робочому чаті стосовно бомбардування пригороду Києва, наступу російських військ на Київ. Ми спочатку в це не хотіли вірити, не могли це усвідомити, але згодом, оцінивши і небезпеку ситуації, все, що може статися, вирішили залишатися вдома, тому що найнебезпечніше місце для нас – це наш дім. Ми в себе вдома. Мій син і чоловік записалися до територіальної оборони, і дуже важко було збирати свого сина на війну, тому що розумієш, що це така подія, яка може закінчитися тим, що більше ви ніколи один одного не побачите. Наші неповнолітні діти, вони спали майже місяць у підвалі, постійно туди спускалися, хоч і ці підвали не дуже захищають від всього небезпечного. Інший син поїхав у Німеччину, там знаходиться вже більше 2 місяців, тому що, окрім того, що йде війна, руйнація, потрібно думати про майбутній розвиток. Ми віримо в нашу перемогу і вдячні всім, хто нас в цьому підтримує.
The things that people bring with them to work, the things that they are living through, and it reflects that every single person in that workplace has a story like that and is having to deal with treating the cancer patients as well as the burden of what they're living through and the uncertainties they hold. So I go back to the AAPM statement that while medical physics is about science and technology, ultimately our field is about people. And the fact that we've had 100 participants, which is the maximum amount registered at this presentation, I think it attests to the fact that you all agree with us. Thank you for your attention, and I might open to questions since there are so many people here. Both of our speakers, Natalia Kovalchuk and Ruslan Zelinsky, I believe, are online. So I might stop sharing, and Dale, I'll let you steer from here.
Thanks. I'll just send a message to Ruslan and to Natalia so they can unmute themselves now. I think Natalia is now online. And just inviting Ruslan as well. Thank you all for a very thought-provoking, powerful, terrifying presentation in many ways. I think all of us need to remember that for those in Ukraine, it was just like us in Australia carrying out our lives and our jobs and our work until 3 months ago. So it's very, very sobering what we see. One of the questions that's come in is whether Natalia, the programs that you've referred to, are you aware of any of that taking place already in Australia and New Zealand? Are we helping anybody at the moment?
So far, to my knowledge, not in the areas of, in the medical physics or the areas that we're in, no.
And do we, what about in the US, Natalia? Have you have programs there, I take it?
Yes, so in US, multiple institutions volunteered to provide the training observership for radiation oncologists. We are looking for placements now for medical physicists as well. And we have actually a list of various oncology professions, medical oncologists, a BMT, pediatric oncologists, so forth. So we are reaching out to many institutions across US, even in Europe, to help us find this funding for for observerships and scholarships. It would be great if professional organizations contribute to this. So I heard from Natalka. Natalka petitioned AAPM, and there are some indications that there might be some funding possible for medical physicist training programs for refugees, for displaced medical physicists where they are in their place currently. But so we have to clarify that and see where to go from there.
There are many questions coming through asking how we can do something and where do we go to start this. Is this a federal government activity or what? And Natalka, I think we need to take that on board and follow that up.
Well, I think this was the first step, because I think it's important to communicate what is happening. And it's important to show that the sort of work that Natalia Kovalchuk at Stanford has been doing with the colleagues in the USA and Canada, we can also do something here. And I think it's really important to say that we are not in competition. We are really working together.
We are collaborating. So we are helping. Yes.
And so therefore there is a single register of people that can come out. There's a single understanding of who can come out, because also it's not practical for everybody to leave, and most people don't want to leave. Actually, most people want to stay at their post and keep treating. So this is why I say it's about planning for now, but also planning for that moment when it comes to rebuild, because things don't automatically happen. You don't automatically have lots of money and so on and so forth. But it's important to start that ball rolling. So maybe one of the things that we should do is form some sort of subcommittee where we start working out how can we make this work and how can everyone play a role. Australia and New Zealand has made quite a name for themselves in their training and education around radiopharmacy, nuclear medicine, radiation oncology. These are the sorts of things that for us is something we've got in our pockets. Why wouldn't we share it? It would be such a simple and small step to take.
Natalia, are you aware of any interactions on this with the International Atomic Energy Agency? Because we do a lot of work with them in terms of training, radiation therapy, oncology, nuclear medicine.
So far, I have not reached out to them, but I can definitely.
We certainly have very good links with them as well. That we can
that's
explore.
great. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's a great idea.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm not, I can see Ruslan is online, but he hasn't unmuted. Maybe if you could just ask him again, that would be great, just in case there are additional questions.
Yeah, I've tried a few times, but for some reason it's not responding. Okay, well, look, thank you very much for putting that together, Natalka and Natalia, for staying up into the wee small hours to join us. We greatly appreciate that. And of course, from Australia, we really, wish all the best in a very difficult situation, and we hope that it is resolved peacefully in the very near future. So thanks all.
Thank you very much. Is it possible to take a photograph before everyone leaves?
I've got them.
Oh, okay.
All 4 screens.
Okay. So what we'll be doing is sharing that with our colleagues in Ukraine, because I think for them to know that people on the other side of the world are interested and do want to help, and the maximum number, I think it will have a huge moral support. So thank you to everyone for engaging and for your words, and let's put them into action.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.